Hola, audiencia, y bienvenidos a Oye Cinema Club. I am tonight's host, Jason Ishmael Eccles. I am joined by my illustrious panel of co-hosts, Steve Des TV and Marina. Watch, laugh, cry. Tonight, we reviewed the Italian film from 2013, The Great Beauty. So I picked this movie. I'll quickly tell you guys why I picked it. It's almost always the same reason that I pick any film, because it's from the 1001 movies you must see before you die list that Time Magazine published. This was on the list, and then most recently, I was asking this random lady I was talking to, what are your three favorite movies? And she mentioned this. I had never heard anybody mention this before, but I always remember the box cover from the list. So I said, we'll pick that one. And I did. I picked it and we reviewed it. Let's get into first impressions. Steve Des TV, why don't you take us away with your first impression of The Great Beauty?
Okie dokie. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Mr. Ishmael Eccles. I'm going to tell you about my first impression, initial thoughts. This movie, at the very beginning, for a person that has ADD, was difficult for me to pay attention to a lot of different things because I was hearing Italian, and I actually used to be fluent in Italian when I was a teenager. I already speak Spanish, so it's also similarities there. But there's also like subtitles that I was trying to read, and at first I didn't put it with the subtitles, so I was like confused, and I had to go back to then go like, what happened here? So it took me a while to get like into the movie itself, but once I really delved into the movie, I was like, wow, this is amazing cinematography. I was actually more expecting it. I was like, where's the part where it goes black and white? Because since you
Mm.
guys were talking about in the group chat about black and white stuff, I just thought this movie was going to be black and white. I didn't even look at the date or anything of this movie. I just popped it in and started watching it, and quite quite a ride, quite a ride. And I feel like in between, like once I finished the movie, I kind of, in a way, it put me in a state of being more at ease. Because like in the between, I was just like, what's going on? What is all this nonsense? But in a way, he does summarize all that stuff in the end with the blah 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 happens, and like yeah, because like in between the partying and the stuff, I was just like, what is going on? And there's a bunch of scenes that I need clarification for me to understand certain things. But yeah, that's my first impression.
All right, terrific. Thanks for that first impression. Marina, you're up. What do you got? First impression.
Well, like many movies that Jason picks, my first impression was what the fudge. Um,
Ah,
dark fudge, milk chocolate fudge, what the fudge. Um, a lot going on. It reminded me a lot of our last Italian film that also had a lot going on. And then it was like mix in some Bollywood and some Great Gatsby and just like stir it all around. Yeah, I don't ever know if I ever figured out what the fudge. I'm glad Steve had a nice like come to Jesus with it all, but like I get that it's like life and the journey and regret and let's party, but it was very hard for me to connect to the main character and what he was going through. Um but yeah, it's still always good like going through this list and like just getting a piece of like different cinematography because it was like there was beauty in so many things. It was just really hard for me to attach myself to the story. So looking forward to like diving in and like figuring out like how deep things may have gone and I just didn't notice because of like, language and it's already dealing with subtitles and not I am not fluent in Italian, Spanish or anything. So 50% of my struggle was just like comprehension and then attaching it to an actual screenplay. So looking forward to talking about some things and be like, oh, that makes more sense.
right on, right on. Very cool. Yeah, great. Thank you for that first impression. I'll go ahead and give you guys my first impression. I agree with you guys on everything you just said. I'm glad you all said it because it's going to save me a little bit of time here. Um, Everything you guys just said, plus uh, I have to make mention of the cinematography because it's one of the first things that I noticed. And then by the end of the film, I kind of thought to myself, oh, like almost every shot in this thing was kind of beautiful, or at least worth looking at. Just like beautiful photography, beautiful lighting. The art direction is incredible. It photographs Rome as beautiful as any movie does. That whole luxurious Italian kind of scene. It photographs all that marvelously, just like any Fellini film that we've watched so far. This thing it feels like a modern day Fellini film. Honestly, it's kind of scattered. It's all over the place. There was one central figure where everything's kind of through his point of view, but there's not one story happening. It's just kind of like this one guy's like a couple weeks in his life. Essentially, that's what this thing feels like. We're just sort of following him around as he goes to funerals and goes to these parties and he goes to work, and that's just sort of what it feels like at the end of the day. But the movie is scattered all over the place. It's cut in between flashbacks and not so flashbacks and things that just happened maybe like just prior to that, but also like, and it's just a collection. And by the end of the collection, you sort of know who these characters are a little bit in each scene. Also, I noticed several times in this movie they talk about he's writing a book about nothing, or he's doing a thing about nothing, and they're like, oh, that's so brave and bold. And then like a few moments later, I realized, oh, this is a movie about nothing. It's almost making commentary on itself. I feel like that's just what Italian movies are, man. I just feel like they're very what's a nice word for it? I don't want to say the mean word for it, but they're just kind of like very self-involved. These Italian movies about these men. But that is my first impression of this thing. So I guess because we all talked about how beautiful it looks, like let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about some things that may have made some impressions on us as far as like the look of the film.
Well, definitely. I love like fancy Italian looks. Like anytime we get to a scene where it's like showing off like the wealth, like the hairstyles, the makeup, the clothing. It was pretty funny when they had like the Botox scene too. Like all these just like
The Botox party.
yeah, just like it's just like yeah, American wealth is there as well, but just like it's so interesting to see what wealth looks like in other places and like um how it's depicted. So it definitely was it's just always interesting, like the makeup. Because it wasn't as old. Like it's crazy because I feel like we watched a lot of older movies that like center around Europe. But like it's interesting that this movie is, only from 2013 and still a lot of the style. I'm like, man, were we dressing like that and wearing that kind of makeup at that point? Or is it still, do they keep a lot of like older traditions in some of these other parts of the world um, last longer there? So yeah, definitely makeup and outfits were really out of this world.
Yeah, yeah, I noticed a lot of that as well. The makeup and outfits, and I was particularly curious about the women's fashion, just because women's fashion sort of gives you a better tone of time, right? Of like what's in fashion. Like men's, it's a suit, and it's like we can only gauge it by the cut of the suit, but generally the cut of the suit and the character mostly says more about the character in a film. So yeah, watching women's fashion in movies like this is more telling than not. I love the men's fashion in it. It's always funny to me like how Italian men they're the only white men in the world that can like confidently wear like colorful suits, right? Like black men do it, Indian men do it, like Hispanic men do it. All like brown colored men have no problem wearing like, a red suit, a yellow suit. No problem. Like we do it, look great. Uh, the only white guys that ever even attempted are Italians, but kudos to them, and they make it look fantastic. Fashion, they make mention to the only thing good in Italy that people think is good in Italy is what fashion, and what was the other thing? I forget what it was, but fashion and something. Not fashion and food, but fashion and something. And they're right. They everybody looks stunning in this movie, and they're all rich people. And like even like the fit of the jib of the nuns and stuff, like excuse me, is all kind of like looks great. It's yeah, it's terrific. The art direction is and style of this thing is terrific. Rich people, what can you do?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's definitely really good on that end. And then kind of like one and the same is probably one of my favorite parts of like the way it was shot. I don't know if this was just in my head and I was just trying to like identify with something. It was just very interesting to me, like when the first party scene was filmed. Um, it seemed like they had it seemed like everybody was an extra. Like, if you because you weren't attached to anybody just yet. But like if you really like watched it, like everybody that was eventually gonna have like an impact on his life kind of had like their close up ish. Like people that like stood out in their own way all ended up being like people that like were a part of the story. I thought that was kind of cool. Like they never really zoomed in, but like they were doing like something like their own dance for a second. It was just
Yeah,
like it was like almost like reality TV, like interview like at the party, and then they came into their lives.
that's yeah. It did. You know, I kept thinking like this scene would probably have a different impact on me if it was in English because there's so much Italian being spoken and they're all talking over each other and talking so fast. And I was trying to read the subtitles and like pick up on facial cues and all that. You know, I had to like rewind those scenes a couple times because I was missing like dialogue. And I was like, oh, if this was in English, like this would be so much easier to pick up on like the nuances of their relationships. But after catching it, it was very interesting. Like, because you're right, there's like two conversations happening at once sometimes, and it's just like a mess. It's just chaos. But it felt very real. It felt very Italian. The acting felt very good. I thought. Um, some of the scenes that looked like very beautifully shot to me stood out. There's like certain lighting on like some of the statues and inside the houses where like the lights would fall on people and it's like wow man like this is so beautiful and like you know when you're making a film and you're setting up a shot like that takes all day to get the lighting that beautiful to appear on camera like that. You know what I mean? And it's like you kind of have to remember, like, man, that setup might have taken a day to get that just right. Um, but yeah, like just really, really great stuff in that direction. Well, we'll get to that later. I'll talk about that later. But Steve, did you have any thoughts about like art direction or cinematography or how the look of the film, style of the film?
I'll say primarily, I mean, it's almost a given, but like every time that like the dude was like, going on a stroll, walking around, you will see how beautiful the landscapes were there in Italy and stuff. And like when he hooks up with the dude that has the keys to everywhere, and he's taking the girl, into like these fancy museums with sculptures and all sorts of things, and all that looked freaking amazing. And there was one shot that I still can't fully. I was trying to remember which one it was, but it was like going through the side, and he's kind of like looking, like overlooking in like a little bridge almost, and it's kind of like dusk ish or dawn.
Mhm.
And like that show was really great. And then of course the flashbacks, like when he's like by the ocean and stuff with the girl, like
Yeah,
those
that's
shots
cool.
were amazing.
Yeah,
So
yeah, those are beautiful. Yeah, I agree with all those. All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes, the story. What you guys think of the story about this thing? Like, what stands out to you? How'd you feel about it? Were you as confused as I was?
Yeah, probably attached to the only thing that made sense, right? Like for me, I mean, no offense to the writer, but like I probably attached myself to this scenario where this guy tells him basically he was the love, of his recently deceased wife's life, and that he felt like he was just like a waste of his life because she loved him the whole time, and then him reflecting and just everything seemed so empty after that and missing this woman and just trying to he was having so much fun partying all the time. And then it kind of made him take a step back. And that's probably the only thing I really could comprehend. Like, in a sense, like I could attach myself to a story and like want to see something happen out of it. Um, yeah, just probably like his love life with these various women throughout.
Yeah, that's what kind of made it like Fellini-esque to me. It's kind of the same deal. This dude is just like managing all these different women. He's never been married. You know, he's just kind of like, gallivanting within his little art community and doing his thing and partying. Like he had a successful book, what, like 35, 40 years earlier, right?
Mm.
And then the book was successful. He was a young man, and he's just been kind of like, perusing, like living like a dandy for the next 40 years off of the success of like this one book that he wrote, that his friends say is a masterpiece. And he goes, nah, you're being generous. Like, it's not, but it clearly is, because he's been living his life off of this one like accomplishment, right? And he's living very well, clearly. So, you know,
Yeah, I almost like, again, there's certain things about it like that make you feel like it was even older, and it could be the bias that we've watched a couple films that like had the same like, showy man, Great Gatsby, almost like unattached to rules and life and has money and on an adventure. So it probably took me like, yeah, it didn't really even hit me. Like, I kept forgetting that it was a newer film. It wasn't until they were touring that space with that guy, and she starts taking pictures on her cell phone, on the cell phone.
yeah,
And
it
I was
kind of
like,
brings you back. Yep.
I forgot. Like, this is 2013. I don't know what year they're saying it is, but there's a cell phone. So like,
Right.
either
He's got an iPhone 5 at least.
at least. So yeah, it did kind of put you in this whimsical world of like where there was no date. Um it's just very interesting. Is that how rich people live? Like,
I think there's something to that, though, because they're in these big old houses and there's no TV. I don't know if there's a TV anywhere in this movie. No one has a TV. It's like, no, we're going to talk to people and we're going to talk about whatever we want. And we've got all the luxurious food and champagnes around us. And we're going to dance all night. And we got our own DJ in this mug at a house party. And we're rich. Like, this won't stop until we say it stops, right? Remember that one movie we watched where everybody was kind of in the conga line or whatever after their party, after their late night party? Or they had a train and they were leaving the party and they were walking off somewhere.
That
It
might
was
have
one
been.
of the Fellini films we watched, but I guess that's a part of Italian culture too. He even mentions it. He goes, "We have the best trains in Rome."
Yeah. I gotta go back and get in the conga line. Like, yeah, it probably was intentional to like make you like feel like you're part of the history there. I am curious though. I didn't have time to look it up. Like, if this creator had any influence. Like, were they a fan of those films? Because it definitely.
Has to be. The influence is so heavy on this thing. I didn't have time to watch any like documentaries about it or anything like that, but I would probably at least see an interview with the filmmaker talking about it, because it seems that way for sure.
Yeah.
And this movie's pretty highly reviewed as well, which I was a little surprised about. I'm not surprised in the sense like, I can't believe people liked it, because it is clearly a really well defined film. And it's so like, Italian filmmakers are so far removed from Hollywood filmmaking. They don't care about it. They don't care about that Joseph Campbell sort of structure thing that we do here in American Hollywood cinema. This weird like 3-act sort of story. They just in these kind of films, they're just all over the place. They don't care. They're like, there are no rules, and we'll tell this thing the way we want to tell it. And you either gonna boo it or love it. We don't care. Here's some money. Like, that's what it feels like when they do these things. It's bizarre. Like, I can't see myself. Well, I guess I could. Never mind. I was going to say I can't see myself going to the cinema to watch stuff like this, but maybe I could actually.
Well, for me too, like, are these critics like hearing it dubbed over, or do they speak Italian? Because I do sometimes wonder. Sometimes I like doing both. Like, obviously, this is a long film, so I didn't have time to do both. But I try to find like English dubbed versions sometimes, because
Mm.
you can miss a lot because you're reading and you're not seeing the acting, and you're just like, oh, what, you can miss some of it. So if someone has like a full immersive experience, completely understanding the words, whether they speak Italian or they're listening to it dubbed over in English or whatever language they speak, maybe it is a different experience. Because I feel like a lot of my like non-attachment was just probably not catching certain things because I'm trying
Yeah.
to read.
Yeah. Right on. Right on. Yeah. That, and also this story is told all over the place, and it's not easy to follow. But it was crafted well enough where I didn't get like scared off by the movie. I didn't get scared off or it's like, I don't know where this thing is going to go. I felt like it's being crafted so well. It would be a real shame if this thing didn't come together in some way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? Like, at least to tell a full picture. And actually, we'll talk about the end later, but I do have some feelings about the end of this movie.
Nice. I do too, but yeah, well, but mine's random. It probably has nothing to do with what you're thinking, but yeah.
All right, well, we'll see in a sec. Let's talk about favorite. Let's jump into our favorite characters or characters that we felt, connected to.
So at first I liked his like boss at the I guess he's a writer. I mean, I know he's a writer, but I
The
guess like
editor.
yeah, the editor. I liked her a lot. Like she was
Yeah.
she had a lot of spunk and she just was like such a little boss. But eventually I really ended up liking Ramona. Um like I liked her. I liked that it gave the story some connection. It was just very interesting. Like he knew her father and his father's like, oh, find her a husband, and they end up becoming friends and stuff. And then obviously, man, right when they were like getting close, she passed away. So it probably had the most emotional impact on me, which probably was like it helped me to connect to something because I was actually a little sad. I'm like, what? She's dead. Oh my gosh. But
Yeah, that was interesting. I had to rewind that a little bit. What exactly befell Ramona?
I have no idea.
They don't like really say anything. It just sort of cuts to like the slow motion montage, and when we come out of the slow motion montage, she's gone.
Yeah, right after her funeral too. The other person, I was just like, we could say it a million times. A lot going on in this film, but it was just pretty sad to see her go because she was just like, I really like it. I liked her. Like, just a 42-year-old stripper, you go, girl.
I like the film. I thought she was cool.
She did,
That was a good character.
she did say she was paying for a cure.
Oh,
Oh,
she spent
so
all
she
her
was
money
sick.
on a tour.
Okay, I guess I missed that she was sick for
Mm.
sure.
That's a good call. Yeah,
They did,
I thought she
they
was like
didn't
being
specify.
mysterious and poetic.
Hmm.
No, they didn't specify, but she said that that's where, because the whole thing was like, where she's spending all this money, like why she's trying to make all this money.
Oh, the dad was like, he doesn't understand why she's always broke. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that. Oh, okay, yeah, because it kind of hit me. I thought maybe she overdosed or something. I didn't know. I was just sad.
Yeah, that's what I was guessing the same thing, honestly.
There
Yeah,
were so many little things that I
probably.
were like for artistic value or just random. Like the singer at one of the parties, like had a cast on. Did you guys notice that? Like she was laying on the piano and she had like a whole leg cast. I'm like, what's that?
Just like one of those real things that happens, and it's there.
Yeah. So,
We're not recasting this role. So, what would you do? How about you,
so that was
Steve?
Well, I'm also going to go with a lady.
With Ramona? Oh, with a lady.
No. This one is a young lady, and I would say she's the young Basquiat or young Banks. What's it called? The street artist?
Banksy.
Banksy? Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
wild. That was making me I don't know about you guys, but it was making me really uncomfortable watching that child do art.
Oh, that one.
Yo, it was also making me uncomfortable, but the reveal, the payoff was worth it. I was like,
The reveal was incredible. I was like, oh my God, like that's incredible.
Well, I might have missed something because like I thought she like crashed the party and was just like let my people go kind of vibes. Like I didn't
Yeah,
I didn't
you did
know.
miss a little something. So just before that, like a few scenes before that, her father comes into the house and she's playing like with her two brothers. They're like eating something silly on the ground. They're eating some kind of food or whatever. And they're like, come outside and do your thing or whatever. And she's like, no, I don't want to. And her brothers are like, yeah, we're playing. And then the dad basically makes them go to sleep. And then she has to come out there kicking and screaming and fighting to come do this art. And it almost feels like child abuse, like, because you don't know that she's a famous artist yet. And that's kind of like what this movie is, isn't it? Like,
Surprise.
it's it's peeling back an onion to reveal what's going on. Because at first, like, dang, these parents are real live dickheads, like making this little girl do this art in the middle of the night at their stupid party. And then she gets up there and she's just raging on it. And it's just like, it's kind of funny backwards when you think about what happened. It's not funny in the moment, but then but then at the end, he goes, the lady's like, I feel so bad for the little girl. She's crying. He goes, what? She makes millions of dollars. Like this is how she feeds the family. Are you kidding me?
Which is still kind of jacked up, but I'm glad it all worked out.
It's wild. It's like little Ryan, the little YouTuber.
Oh, yeah.
That's essentially what was going on there. Just
He's
a kid artist.
He's getting bigger. I'm getting worried, but that's a whole other story.
There's a whole movie in theaters about Ryan right now.
I saw that and I was like, what?
Anywho, yeah, that little girl.
It's like a Truman Show. He doesn't even know. All right, enough about Ryan. God bless him.
Oh man, but yeah. All right. What about you, Jason? Did you already say?
Oh man, so I'm going to diverge a little bit. I don't know why it made me sad. Maybe there's something about it like tragic that I could relate to. But his best friend that was with him, and he was always trying to get art stuff off the ground, and he was trying to be a poet and a writer, and he's trying to do all these different things. And he's like in the right kind of crowd, in the right kind of like around the right people, but he's not able to like connect and make any art happen. And then like you start to realize, well, yeah, you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. You're doing it for like a woman, but then again, he sort of wants like companionship. Then you find out he's been in Rome trying to make it as an artist for like 40 years and like nothing's ever come of it. And then it's like, wow, that's incredibly sad. And then like his friends are like, well, why are you going home? Like we're partners in this. And he goes, oh man, I gotta get out of here. Like I've been here for 40 years, like nothing ever came of it. And it's at the end of the road. It's time to move on. And like that kind of made me sad. And then also like he's chasing this woman who doesn't want anything to do with him. And like he finally has a moment of relief where I did something that people came out to see. It was worth watching, and they're giving me applause. And he didn't even expect an applause because he had never received any like positive feedback about anything he did, messing around with this goofy woman that he's been chasing for like, what did they say, 5 years or something? He's been chasing her, and she's never even like she's never kissed him or something like that. It's like, what are you doing, bro? And I just kind of felt bad for him because he's chasing all these things that he doesn't truly even want, kind of. And just sort of like, it's sort of like this meditation of like a wasted life. Maybe he loved the adventure of it, but he didn't seem very satisfied at the end of the adventure.
Yeah.
That character felt kind of tragic to me.
I know. It's crazy. Like, what was his name? Romano. But yeah, I was kind of shocked at that too. Like, it is kind of, that's what he's saying in the beginning. Like it is a lot about life choices and life coming around and how you feel after you're done with it. Like they probably had some great times. Like all those parties, probably so much fun and stuff. But yeah, it happens to the best of us, whether it's 40 years or 4. Sometimes you just gotta get out the scene if it's not doing it for you. So
it's not serving you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is for me in that character. I think at the very end, he gets the applause and it means so much to him. But then like he gets out of his own moment and he checks on this girl to see if he's getting her approval. And when he looks if she's been looking at her cell phone the whole time, and as soon as they start applauding, she just walks out. She can't even give him that. And it's like, dog. And it's like, I feel like I've met guys like that. You know what I mean? I've met people like that. And it's like, wow. Like, just confused about how it's supposed to be. It's, not even the main character in their own story. God bless them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the character that like kind of identify with me, but I loved all you guys' choices as well. All right. Well, we've talked about a lot about this movie. Let's just jump straight into final thoughts, shall we? Final thoughts. Steve, you can do the graphic for that later. We're gonna need a final thoughts graphic, just like that. Let's see. Why don't well, I won't do my final thought first. I'll go last. How about that? Marina, why don't you hit us with your final thought?
Still don't know what the fudge, but But it's been great kind of going through it with you guys and knowing, because like you hate to be the only one who didn't like understand an art masterpiece, like certain parts of it. You just feel like so not classy. So it's good to know we all appreciated it, but things were a little fuzzy. Only thing I was gonna say, I couldn't find the name to the song, but I feel like that not like the song where like the nun is like on the stairs.
Oh,
I feel like that song is in Sound of Music.
it might be. I
That's
have to
all.
go back and
And I
check.
just would love
That's
to know
pretty
the
good.
name of that song if we could ever figure that out. And so yeah, so just yeah, overall, it would be interesting to maybe find this movie with English dubbing. Maybe just take away, be able to you lose the emotion, I feel like, when you don't hear the native tongue, but it's cool. I've already felt that. It'd be nice to just kind of comprehend better. So I'll probably give this a rewatch if I can find it dubbed in English. Recommendation wise, just people who are, into like learning more about, different cultures and seeing the way that the acting. And even if you're like a Fellini fan too, like just like I'd be like, hey, you should watch this movie. I feel like it has a lot of influence. I can sound very fancy.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just overall, I wish I could connect to it more. It's just a lot going on, and I just don't feel like I fully inhaled what the creator was trying to give, just because of like lack of being able to comprehend a lot and keep up with subtitles to emotions to the acting to the plot. There's just a lot happening there, but it still was enjoyable, and it was still things I could take away, as a person who loves watching movies.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you. Steve, hit us with that final thought.
Sure thing. So before I go into my quick final thought, that was a Botox scene. That's what was
Yeah, the
happening.
Botox thing. Hmm. Yeah, they were rich people party. They were doing Botox.
Bro, I didn't know if they were getting the Moderna, the Pfizer. I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to make sure because the dude was getting mad at women, going like, "Hey, you backhanded me. Charge your full price." Like, I'm
Mm.
like, "Yo, what?" It's like that with the Hispanic lady. But anyway, final thoughts. This movie for sure. If you're a person that's not a native or second language fully fluent Italian speaker, this might be a movie you kind of want to watch twice to really digest it in and like really get a little bit of everything. I feel like this movie it's slightly, not entirely, but slightly open to interpretation.
Hmm.
Uh, because at least what I interpreted from the movie was just more like, sure, you can have like essentially things that you desire and want, but you're gonna make sacrifice for those things. And then kind of like through the movie, you see him wandering around because he didn't feel he had anything else to accomplish. He even like in the party when he like just tells the cold truth to the chick of like how she's been living and how much she's been complaining.
Mm.
To just like, hey, basically, we're all trying to have a good time because we're all dying. Like we're all gonna die, and we're just trying to enjoy this little thing that we have here. Uh, but at the end, you can kind of see him kind of going through, especially ever since he gets confronted by that guy of like, hey, like I broke into her diary, everything. From that moment on, he's even questioning his own accomplishments and existence and everything because he doesn't feel like he's fully fulfilled. Sure, he became like the top guy essentially in the high class because that's what he aimed to be, but he did it with nobody by his side. He wasn't like fully satisfied in that sense, and he was just seeking those feeble, fleeting, quick pleasures of life. And that's why it felt even good to just genuinely help someone without the exchange of sex. And like I feel like overall, like that's why in the beginning I was like super lost because I was just like, what's going on or whatever. But then towards the end, and especially reading in the beginning, there's like a big, like I don't know if it's a poem or a passage or what it is, but that also gives a lot of context of what the movie itself is going to be about and the core message of it. So yeah, overall, it's a great watch. Cinematography out of this world. Really beautiful, beautiful. Uh, Done and everything and executed. And I will highly recommend to a bunch of people that like foreign films.
Wow, wow, those reviews are a little bit more glowing than I thought maybe you guys were going to give you credit for. So that's
Hey, you
cool.
wanted to jump quick to final thoughts? I have more to say, but hey, I had to pack it all in there. You know.
No, I that's awesome. Okay, so my final thought. My final thought is very similar to you guys in almost every way. The thing I guess I should just emphasize a couple things. One, yes, Marina is right. This is totally for Fellini fans, people who like old Italian cinema, people who like movies that kind of talk and pontificate a lot with very snappy dialogue and lots of words about philosophy and the understanding of life. And I do like that because it's from older people. Sometimes when younger people in movies do these kind of things, I mean, if it's good philosophy, it's good, but it means something more when an older person does it because it's like, yeah, they've lived it, and these actors, they're very good at showing the hurt and the despair and the longing in their eyes. And this movie does a very good job of making you feel that, at least by the end of the film. Like it's very disjointed. So it's maybe you don't even know that that's what the intention of the movie is. But I think Steve is right to my second point, where he says the thing's probably a little open to interpretation because of the way the story is situated. You get this, it's so much easier to attach yourself to a different story because it's all over the place. Like they're really telling like maybe 4 or 5 different stories in this movie, maybe 6 even, but you're getting it in bits and pieces, almost like in vignettes, and you just sort of like attach yourself to like one of the outcomes. Like you really do want to know how certain outcomes are going to work out for certain characters in this thing. But yeah, this probably is a masterwork. Like this is probably not an easy movie to create. I kept thinking that when I was watching it, the script. Like, man, like this script had to be really on point to even get this far in the movie. Like to keep all this together would have had to like you can't figure this out on the set. Like you, this thing has to be like really defined and just to know what you're doing here. And it is a really defined script. It just feels like a poem, sort of like old Italian and Japanese movies often do. It just feels you know, like I say, these people pontificating about nothing, but at the end, you kind of realize it is about something. It's about life. It's about all the things that come along in life. And I know that sounds very broad and weird, but that's very much what the movie's about. It's about these different segments of our life, all the way up until the end. There is one thing though that I really liked because there is so much indulgence in this movie, so much like luxury and riches and people dressed well and people, spending money and, doing all types of stuff. Um, when the nun comes out and they're trying to interview her and she doesn't really say anything throughout this whole movie. And when they ask her the one question and she finally speaks, she goes, you don't speak about poverty. It is experienced. And it's like, wow. And she just shut everybody at that table up. They don't know anything about poverty. And you want her to sit here and talk to you about poverty while you guys are living in decadence? It's almost insulting. You know what I mean? And that I found to be like really, really powerful. Really powerful. In a movie like this, it doesn't like let you off the hook, even if you are like a rich indulgent person or you're even a poor person who's indulging. Like poor people often like to watch movies about rich stuff. All throughout history, like that has been the case. And so, like, yeah, even when you're in here, you can't forget about that. Even when you're just trying to have a good time in this rich world and not think about that, hey man, it's still outside. You got to deal with it a little bit. You got to at least acknowledge it. You need to meditate on it. So that I thought was cool. Who would I recommend this to? Again, people who love Italian cinema, people who love old Italian cinema, Fellini fans, people who like movies that pontificate. Would I watch it again? Yes, I would watch this movie again. I kind of like the idea that Marina had of watching it dubbed. Steve also mentioned, something about watching it again or, with people or whatever. And I think this thing could deserve a second watch down the line, believe it or not. Kind of the same way I feel about the Fellini stuff. I would almost want to watch it with someone, so I can sound like really smart and like I know what I'm talking about and like really well versed in these things, just to be really impressive. That
That's a
might
book
be why I
story.
watch it. Yeah, exactly. Just sound like a real smarty pants, just intolerable. Okay, so that's our review for The Great Beauty. I guess that just leaves me with one question, and that's for Steven. Steve, what do you got for us next week?
Next week, I am so happy you asked me because for the first time in a long time, you're right. It is my turn.
Oh, is it?
It is. So for the next cinema club, I have a movie that I have a confession to make. I just saw this movie maybe 3 days ago. And before watching this movie 3 days ago, I haven't seen this movie in over 10 years. And before, it was a movie that I watched at least prior to me watching it 3 days ago, like 12 times.
Mhm.
And
What is
this
it?
is a movie. And this is a movie that when I was growing up, I really liked it a lot.
This is what you're supposed to explain why you picked the movie starting next week.
And then I used this film a lot to, on my own acting journey, use this film to exercise crying.
All
Mm.
right.
So
Losing your zing.
get ready for a tearjerker, ladies and gentlemen, because the next film that we are going to watch here exclusively on Cinema Club
Exclusively.
is the 2004 hit.
The Notebook.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. A little bit of Notebook action.
That demographic. Let's go.
So, for Marina, Jason Echoes, Steve Des TV, and Nicholas Sparks, and Ryan Gosling. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.
All right.